Hey friends, this is Dolynny TV. Glad to have you aboard this morning as we queue up a little talk on Evan Bouchard, Vinny Desharnais, Darnell Nurse, and Mr. Paul Coffey behind the bench. Well, kind of coaching them all up and getting results out of them like maybe we haven't seen in the course of their Edmonton Oilers careers thus far. Friends, I'm Tyson. Welcome to the channel as we get set up to discuss the Oilers defense in a bit here today. Of course, if you are new to the channel, I will encourage you just right off the top, get this out of the way, to consider hitting that subscribe button here on Dolynny TV. Stick around for what will be an exciting finish to this Oilers season now that we're in a wild card spot. Just for the time being, we'll be battling to get into a full-time position here over the next week or so. Tuesday against the Blackhawks, the next game on the schedule for the Oilers. The Flames losing to the Blackhawks, and that's kind of cause for concern for the Oilers because you now have to step up your game even that much more on a 7-game win streak to make sure you don't choke it against the Hawks, who have more salary cap on the IR than they do on the active roster. Okay, enough about setting up Tuesday. Let's talk about Paul Coffey and what he's done with this Edmonton Oilers defense. I'm not going to go sit here and analyze it player by player. I'm not going to sit here and analyze it play by play, simply because everybody and their dog have done that so far since Paul Coffey took over with this defense. What we do know is three main things. The Oilers defense has evolved in three ways. Vinny Desharnais has taken giant steps forward. That partly because he's got a full-time role on the third pair, no longer being the 7th, 6th swingman defenseman. And second, as well, because, well, he's been enabled by Paul Coffey to play a game that kind of allows for his best to come out. That can be said for Darnell Nurse and Evan Bouchard as well. The full-on effect of the power play, the league's best power play over the past 2.5 years, and now having Evan Bouchard riding on the quarterback position, I guess you could say, bombing them in from the point and scoring goals because of it, is taking full effect for Evan Bouchard's offensive game. Darnell Nurse now having Matthias Ekholm to offset minutes, as well as being enabled, as I said, for Vinny Desharnais, the same for Darnell Nurse by Paul Coffey, is really allowing for Darnell Nurse to not necessarily show that he's a $9 million plus defenseman, but kind of take the heat off him and kind of scale back the criticism that I think so many fans have had of him over the past several years. And now the beautiful part here is for the Oilers, you've got three key pieces of your defense, right? You got your biggest guy, your meanest guy on the defense playing plus minutes. And what I mean by that is when Vinny Desharnais is on the ice, he's helping you a lot more than he's hurting you. I could throw any of what stat you want at it, but Vinny Desharnais just going out there game in, game out compared to the start of the year, right? Everybody at the start of the year and throughout the playoffs, the first guy they wanted off the defense was Vinny. Now all of a sudden you look at him in his game here under Paul Coffey. It's been fantastic to watch him just kind of quiet down, steady out. He's got some offense to his game, which we knew was there early last year when he got called up. But now you kind of see that he's a guy who can contribute shots to the net. He can contribute shots to traffic, but he also kind of closes gaps well. He has that physical edge. He has that nastiness in front of the net after the whistle. And he's a guy that I think you're slowly seeing turn it on. The last 3 games, he's played 16 plus minutes, I believe, and he's starting to slowly turn it on. And when you talk about that, you got Brett Kulak, who is steady Eddie as ever. Yeah, you know what? Fight about his contract all you want, as I have done over the past few years as well. But the big thing is Brett Kulak's a guy who turns it on game 1 of the playoffs. Brett Kulak is not a guy who's going to be razzle-dazzle, flash, and great defense and everything throughout 82 games. He's a guy that just kind of quietly floats on by. Nobody even realizes he's out there. Kind of similar to late stage of his career, Chris Russell. And then, of course, you've got Brett Kulak coming into the playoffs, and he just explodes on the scene. There's been back-to-back playoff runs where in games he's been the best defenseman for the Oilers. And end of the day, I got to sneeze here, so pardon me in a few seconds here. But there we go. But you know what? That's where you're going to see Vinny Desharnais now over the next 40-ish games kind of have that similar ascent as the back half of the year. He really ratchets up his hockey. And I think Vinny Desharnais is going to be a monster under Paul Coffey in the playoffs if he stays healthy, if he is able to play the same game that has kind of been lifting his spirits here and lifting our spirits as well over the past 16, 17, 18, 20 games here for the Oilers. Now, the other side, too, Evan Bouchard, the offense is unparalleled for an Edmonton Oilers defender since pretty much Paul Coffey, to be honest with you. And the biggest thing for Evan Bouchard in that is when you produce the massive points, it's always going to alleviate some of the defensive game in terms of not necessarily the responsibility or the criticism, but just in terms of the overall perception, right? Is for a guy on the defense who probably plays the weakest defensive game out of anyone in our six right now in terms of Evan Bouchard, right? He's soft in the corners at times. He's kind of slow getting back at times. Even that stuff has kind of evolved under Paul Coffey, though, right? As all the criticisms have slowed down, yes, large in part thanks to the offense and what it's done over the past little bit. But you watch Evan Bouchard's game over the past 5, 10 especially here. You've watched him kind of slow it down. He's been able to transition back with stick in the lane, or either taking the body and shoving a man off the puck or taking him to the outside a lot more effectively here over the past 5 to 10 games. So kind of a similar thing to Vinny Desharnais being enabled by Paul Coffey to play both sides of the puck, but also being able to make mistakes and try and regain it back on the next play. Bouchard's definitely kind of taken that into full effect in terms of high risk has kind of almost been eliminated from his game here, but also high reward has been introduced to his game. And it's kind of this nice mixture where you're playing within this pocket of defense, and it's really starting to clamp down for Evan Bouchard and that Mattias Ekholm pairing, which we talked about the other week there, which is technically at that standpoint in the NHL season, the best pairing in the NHL in terms of driving play as a defensive pair. So that's fantastic to see for the Edmonton Oilers, and now we hopefully see that continue throughout the season. And lastly, Darnell Nurse, who's been absolutely just a monster for the Oilers, right? Every minute he's been out there over the past little bit, I don't think I've seen any harsh criticism of his defensive game. He's a guy that's contributed enough offense to kind of stay alive in that category, but he's a guy who's just very much so gone from this big chaotic ball of energy on the ice down to this very simplistic, very narrow focused defenseman who goes out there, plays hard for his minutes, goes, sits on the bench, motivates the boys, comes back out, plays hard, comes back, does that. So he's kind of narrowed the focus, and very much so under Paul Coffey, been introduced to just that kind of, I don't know, lightness of the game, I guess you could say, right? Where it's don't take everything so hard, right? You're not the end all be all of the Edmonton Oilers defense. Yes, you're the highest paid guy, but slow it down, speed it up at times. It's not the end of the world if you make a mistake, but it's also so much more if you help us by just calming down, right? And I think everybody would say Darnell Nurse over the past 25 games has thought he's a forward a heck of a lot less. I think that would be the easiest way to sum it up. And for the Oilers, you watch what that is, it kind of ramifies through the entire defense, is everybody slowing down, still pushing for the offense. That's been one of the biggest things under Paul Coffey, but slowing down and just allowing the game to work more thoroughly through before they end up forcing things. And that's kind of been the biggest thing for Darnell Nurse, is just there's a calm to his game now. And when Darnell Nurse is calm and giving us quality minutes shift in, shift out, that A, kind of reduces the noise about his contract, and B, you look at the results for the Edmonton Oilers. The goals against is at, 2.4 over the past some odd games. It's the goals against Stuart Skinner has come down drastically. Skinner's save percentage has just rised astronomically from where it was 4 or 5 weeks ago. So it's been fantastic to watch for the Edmonton Oilers here over the last little stretch. And the biggest thing is, yes, Chris Knobloch's made some big changes to this team just by plugging and playing some pieces with the lineup. But big thing is Paul Coffey enabling guys, kind of giving them tasks that they can fully control within their own games. And under these three guys, you can see that full effect from Paul Coffey, and it's just fantastic. Again, I don't need to break it down thoroughly. That's just some very easy concepts to grasp, I think, in terms of what's changed with three key pieces on the Oilers defense, and a big contribution of why we have 15-3 record in the last 18 games. Sorry, that was awkward. Butchered that again. Though, I'm just about done talking here. I've taken up too much of your Monday morning. I'm Tyson, this is Dolynny TV. You have a great day at work. We'll talk to you a little later on this afternoon. I am up on out of here.